Go
told
home,
you this
ape.
luggage was unauthorized.
The
You think
words
the
cut
rules don't
through
apply to you?
Terminal
Pick this up right
C-22
now or
like
stay
metal
right here.
scraping glass. Every head turned. Phones rose. The airport, that usual blur of
asking you for the
wheels and
last time
chatter,
to hand over that
froze
device.
mid-motion. A flight attendant in crisp
We are
blue
initiating a full
uniform
compliance review
stood center
immediately. You
frame,
cannot proceed.
one polished heel pressed against an open suitcase. Inside, a folded gray coat and a worn passport trembled under her weight. Across from her stood Amara Lewis, silent, still, eyes fixed on the woman crushing her belongings. No makeup flash, no designer tags, just dark jeans and a quiet steadiness that didn't match the humiliation hanging in the air. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Did she just call her?" But the attendant doubled down, voice sharp enough to pierce the hum of engines outside. "Next time, buy real luggage before boarding first class." Cameras clicked. A teenage boy whispered to his mother, "She's filming, Mom, look." The mother nodded, jaw tight. Amara didn't speak. She reached down, brushed a thumb over the dirt print on her leather bag. Real leather, but that didn't matter here. Her silence wasn't fear. It was measurement. The attendant, Karen Doyle, mistook it for weakness. She sneered, loud enough for the nearby passengers to hear. "Security will handle this. People like you always try to sneak into priority boarding. People like you." 3 words that had followed Amara since she was 19. But not today. She straightened slowly, posture steady, eyes level. The overhead light caught her face just enough for every camera in range to capture the calm before a storm no one saw coming. The murmur around them thickened. A man near the gate muttered, "That's going too far." Another lifted his phone higher. Karen laughed, short and cutting. "Oh, please, what? You gonna cry?" Amara tilted her head, voice soft. "No, I'm just remembering this exact moment." Karen frowned. "What moment?" "The one you'll replay every time someone says the word respect." Before the attendant could answer, a voice came over the PA. Boarding call for Flight 207 to Chicago. But no one moved. The space between them had become something else entirely. A stage, a mirror, a quiet lesson waiting to unfold. Amara turned slightly, scanning the faces circling them, phones raised, disbelief etched in every stare. She spoke once, steady, unshaken. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now back to Amara." She closed her suitcase gently, eyes never leaving the woman still smirking before her. In 3 minutes, the balance of this terminal would shift, and the woman laughing now would be fighting for her job. The engines outside roared like distant thunder. Inside, silence gathered its strength. Karen's laugh echoed down the terminal like static on bad speakers. "What's that face? You think silence makes you right?" Amara didn't move. The edges of her calm were sharp enough to cut through the noise. Passengers whispered in small clusters, phones angled, screens reflecting disbelief. At gate C-22, an announcement chimed overhead. Polite and robotic. Final call for Flight 207 to Chicago. No one boarded. The real flight was happening right here. A TSA officer glanced over from the corner, hesitated, then looked away. No one wanted to step into the storm yet. Karen crouched, tapping the leather handle of Amara's bag with one manicured nail. "You know what gives you away?" she said. Amara looked down, expression unreadable. "Pretending you belong." Those words hit harder than the crowd expected. Even the teenage boy who'd been filming lowered his phone slightly. Eyes wide, a woman in a business suit muttered, "That's not okay." Another added, "Someone call her supervisor." Karen spun toward them, smiling with professional venom. "I am the supervisor." The arrogance landed heavy. Amara tilted her head. "Then you're also the example." Karen blinked. "Excuse me?" "You'll understand soon." Her phone buzzed in her palm. One short vibration. She didn't look, didn't need to. That signal meant Nia was online, watching everything through the internal Sky Nova system feed. For Amara, the silence wasn't empty. It was data being logged, timelines being written. Karen crossed her arms, voice rising. "Security's coming. We don't let scammers hold up boarding." Someone from the crowd said, "She showed her ticket." Karen snapped, "You don't speak for this airline." That was the moment irony smiled. Amara finally reached for her phone, slow and deliberate. her voice barely above a whisper but clear enough for Karen and the dozen recording phones and to catch every word. Ania, verify Staff Doyle, Gate C-22, and log her statement. We don't let scammers hold up boarding. Timestamp it. Karen froze. Who are you calling? Amara's gaze stayed level. Someone who cares about how this airline looks on the internet. Laughter flickered through the bystanders, nervous, uncertain. Karen straightened, trying to reclaim control. You can record all you want, sweetheart. You'll still be escorted out. Amara's tone stayed calm. We'll see who walks out first. The teenage boy whispered, Oh, she's about to do something. His mother hushed him, but she didn't look away. Karen's radio crackled. Doyle, report to gate control immediately, a voice ordered. She frowned. Now? Yes, now. The timing was surgical. Amara closed her suitcase and stood upright. Her movements were quiet, deliberate, like a verdict being delivered without words. Every eye followed her, unsure if they were watching a confrontation or a reckoning. Ma'am, Karen said, forcing a smile that no longer reached her eyes. You can't just... Amara cut her off softly. You've mistaken uniform for authority. Don't confuse it with power. The sentence landed like a sentence, literal, final, and somewhere deep in Karen's chest, confidence cracked just enough for the cameras to see it. Outside the window, a jet engine thundered alive. Inside, Justice had just started boarding. The footsteps came first, heavy, official, echoing against the polished floor of Gate C-22. Two security officers in gray uniforms cut through the crowd, their radios hissing like a warning before words were even spoken. Karen exhaled in relief she didn't deserve. Finally, she muttered, smoothing her uniform. Right here, that's her. Amara didn't turn. She was busy locking the zipper on her suitcase, every motion slow, controlled, intentional. Ma'am, one of the officers said, voice flat. We need to step over here for a moment. The crowd shifted, creating a circle of quiet. The phones were still up, recording, watching how calm looked when it refused to back down. Karen stepped forward eagerly, pointing. She's been obstructing boarding, using a fake ticket, harassing staff. The officer raised a hand. Ma'am, we'll handle it. He looked at Amara. Can I see your boarding pass? Amara handed it over without a word. He scanned it with the small terminal device on his belt. The screen flashed green. He frowned, checked again. Green, verified. Karen blinked. That's impossible. The other officer leaned in, whispering. It's legit. First class 2A. Murmurs rippled through the passengers. Someone whispered, I knew it. Amara said nothing. She just looked at Karen, not angry, not triumphant, simply aware. Karen's voice cracked. Well, maybe the system glitched. She doesn't look... Finish that, Amara said quietly. Karen didn't. The teenage boy lowered his phone just long enough to whisper, Oh, she's done. Then Amara's phone buzzed again, one long vibration. Her thumb pressed the side button. Go ahead, Nia. A clear, confident voice echoed from the speaker. Verification complete. Staff member Karen Doyle flagged for internal bias incident. Reporting to HR command. Gate C-22 feed is live. The crowd gasped softly. Even the security officers exchanged glances. Karen stammered, What feed? Amara finally spoke low and precise. The one your airline uses to monitor misconduct in real time. Her eyes flicked toward the nearest ceiling camera. A faint red light blinked once. Recording. Wait, how? Karen started. Amara cut in, calm but edged. Every Skynova gate has it. I should know. I approved the installation. The sentence hung there like a verdict. The older officer straightened. Ma'am, are you saying... Amara looked at him. I'm saying you'll want to stay professional for the next 3 minutes. A hush fell. The boy's phone caught Karen's face, collapsing from arrogance to realization. Her mouth opened, then closed again, a silent plea no one wanted to hear. Across the intercom, a female voice chimed. Attention gate staff. Immediate compliance review in progress. Please stand by. Gasps scattered like sparks. Someone whispered, She's not bluffing. Amara adjusted her blazer sleeve, revealing the edge of a sleek black ID tag clipped discreetly beneath her cuff. It caught the light, the silver Skynova crest etched beside her name. Amara Lewis, Chief Executive Officer. The crowd inhaled as one. Karen stepped back, color draining from her face. Amara spoke softly for everyone to hear. You wanted to call security. She glanced at the officers. Well, security's here. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was judgment. Outside, the plane's turbines roared to life. Inside, so did the truth. Every screen at gate C-22 flickered. First came the airline logo, then a line of white text. Compliance audit in progress. Sky Nova internal feed active. A low wave of murmurs rolled through the terminal. Passengers leaned forward in their seats, eyes darting between the display boards and the woman standing so still beneath them. Karen's voice broke the silence. This is a mistake. She's hacking the system. Her words came out high and thin, stripped of confidence. Amara didn't move. She only tilted her head toward the nearest monitor. On it, the live security feed showed them. The gate, the crowd, the two officers, and Karen's hand still gripping the handle of the suitcase she'd kicked minutes earlier. No edits, no cuts. Just truth on replay. You wanted everyone to see, Amara said softly. Now they do. The older officer, name tag Mendez, cleared his throat. Ma'am, for the record, you have full authorization for this. Amara nodded once. Page 12 of the employee code. Corporate oversight emergency activation clause. He blinked. That's top-level clearance. It should be, she replied. Karen backed away a step. You can't do this. I'm a senior attendant. You don't have the right. Amara turned to her fully, calm as ice. I don't need the right. I have the responsibility. That sentence cut deeper than shouting ever could. From behind the gate counter, a young attendant peeked out. Mia Lopez, 23, new hire. Her hands trembled around a tablet, but her voice found its edge. I saw her name in the system this morning, Mia said. CEO Amara Lewis, it's real. The room erupted, gasps, whispers, a few claps. One man muttered, knew something was off when she stayed that calm. Another woman whispered, she owns the airline. Karen's mouth opened, but the words never arrived. Her radio crackled instead. Doyle, this is HR command. Stand by for review. Effective immediately, your access is suspended. She looked down. The small badge light on her chest turned red. A collective breath released from the crowd. Amara didn't smile. She simply lifted her phone again. Nia confirmed termination protocol on staff ID 4723. A beat. Confirmed, Nia's voice replied through the speaker. Badge deactivated. Report logged and archived. Karen dropped the radio as if it burned. Mendez took half a step closer to Amara. Ma'am, do you want us to escort her out? Amara shook her head slowly. No, let her walk. Everyone should see the difference between force and consequence. The passengers parted without a word as Karen stumbled toward the exit. Her reflection passed across the glowing screens, her own face looping behind her. Evidence eternal. Mia looked at Amara, eyes wet but steady. Thank you, ma'am. For not yelling. Amara met her gaze. Justice doesn't need volume. It needs witnesses. Then she turned to the cameras, those still recording, those still streaming, and added quietly, power isn't about who speaks the loudest. It's about who stays standing when the noise stops. For a moment, even the overhead engines seemed to pause. The crowd held its breath as if waiting for applause that never came. Amara picked up her suitcase, the same one that started it all, and walked toward the jet bridge, unhurried, unstoppable. The hum of the plane returned, but the terminal had changed. It wasn't noise anymore. It was respect. The clip hit the internet before Amara even reached her seat. One passenger, Leo Tran, the young man with the phone, had already uploaded it to his channel. The caption was simple. Flight attendant mocks passenger, then learns who she really is. By the time the cabin door closed, the video had over 200,000 views. By takeoff, it passed 1 million. Amara didn't check her phone. She didn't need to. The quiet buzz in her AirPods told her everything. Nia was tracking the data surge, watching the outrage spread like wildfire. In the terminal, reporters were already calling Sky Nova headquarters. A spokesperson fumbled through half a sentence before realizing the CEO herself was the passenger in the video. Screens in airport lounges flickered again, not with flight delays this time, but with headlines. CEO humiliated by her own employee. Justice on camera. Sky Nova audit in real time. Amara sat by the window in seat 2A, hands folded, gaze steady on the runway lights. Her reflection on the glass looked calm, almost too calm for someone who'd just turned a global brand inside out. Behind her, Murmurs filled the first-class cabin. "That's her, right?" whispered a woman. A man answered quietly, "Yeah, that's Amara Lewis. I saw the clip." No one dared to approach. They just watched her. The woman who didn't raise her voice, didn't curse, didn't break. The flight attendant assigned to this leg approached carefully. A young black woman, name tag, Danielle. "Ma'am," she said softly, "just wanted to say, that was brave, the way you handled it." Amara looked up, her expression kind but firm. "It wasn't bravery," she said. "It was accountability." Danielle nodded, eyes bright. "Still, people needed to see that." Amara offered a small smile. "Then let's make sure they do." Across the city in Skynova's glass headquarters, the corporate feed was chaos. HR, PR, and legal all flooded into the same call. Someone stammered, "She initiated the audit herself?" "Yes," Nia replied, steady and cold. "And she's already 30,000 feet up. The story's live." The chief of communications dropped his pen. "We're trending in 12 countries." Nia didn't flinch. "Then it's a good day to stand for our own policy." Back on the plane, a notification lit up Amara's phone. It was from Skynova's official account. Public statement. "We are aware of the incident involving flight attendant Karen Doyle. Our internal systems detected policy violations in real time. Skynova Airlines stands for dignity and equality in every cabin." Signed Amara Lewis, CEO. She read it once, then locked her screen. Outside the window, dawn was rising over the clouds, gold spilling across a sea of white. For a moment, the hum of the engines became the only sound, and in that silence lived something bigger than revenge. Not triumph. Closure. Amara closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "This isn't about a bag. It's about who we let step on us and who we decide to stand for." 30,000 feet below, the world was still talking. But up here, she'd already said everything that mattered. By sunrise, the clip had reached 10 million views. Every outlet, from travel blogs to morning shows, ran it on loop. The suitcase, the slur, the silence, the reveal. 4 moments. That's all it took to redraw the line between power and appearance. Across the country, hashtags trended. For Sky Nova Justice. Amara Lewis carries dignity in uniform in Houston. A mother replayed it for her teenage daughter before school. "You see her calm," she said? "That's how you fight back without losing yourself." In Chicago, a retired pilot typed a comment. 30 years in aviation. Never seen professionalism look that graceful. The world wasn't angry anymore. It was awake. Meanwhile, inside Skynova headquarters, chaos had turned into course correction. Emails from board members stacked in Nia's inbox. PR wants a press conference. Legal wants the footage down. Nia typed one sentence in reply. She wants it to stay up. At 8:47 a.m., Amara's photo appeared on the cover of Business Current, the CEO who fired with silence. The subheadline read, "When restraint becomes revolution." Reporters begged for interviews. She declined them all. Instead, she sent one message to the internal company network, to every Skynova employee. "If you ever feel pressured to judge before you serve, remember this. Our uniforms don't make us equal. Our integrity does." Within minutes, replies flooded in. Hundreds of them. Some from crew members who'd faced bias themselves, some from managers vowing change, and one, from a young trainee named Elijah, that simply said, "Thank you for showing us what leadership looks like." On the ground, Karen Doyle's story spread in a different direction. Her union rep issued a statement, then quietly retracted it after the audit report was released. The footage proved everything, unedited, uncut, undeniable. Still, Amara refused to gloat. When Nia called mid-morning to say, "The internet's calling you a hero," Amara answered, "I'm not interested in being one. I just want this to be the last time it happens." Nia paused. "You think it will be?" Amara looked out over the clouds below. "Not yet," she said. "But now they'll think twice before they act once." By noon, news anchors framed the story as a new standard for corporate accountability. Analysts debated whether her decision to expose her own airline had been genius or reckless. Amara didn't join the conversation. She was already writing the next policy, one that would require every employee, from gate agent to captain, to take a training called Seeing Dignity. It wasn't punishment. It was prevention. That evening, as her plane descended toward New York, a final notification appeared on her phone. A comment pinned under Leo's viral video. She didn't raise her voice once, and yet everyone heard her. Amara read it twice. Outside the window, the city lights shimmered like 1,000 witnesses. And for the first time in a long while, she let herself smile. By noon the next day, the world had chosen its side. Airports buzzed with conversation, not about flights, but about her. In lounges, on TikTok, in the news, one phrase kept returning: the woman who didn't need to shout. Outside Skynova headquarters in Manhattan, cameras formed a wall of light. Microphones pointed toward the revolving doors like bayonets waiting for a confession. Producers shouted questions before she even stepped out of the car. "Ms. Lewis, why didn't you stop the video from going public? Do you regret firing an employee in front of passengers? Was this all staged for publicity?" The glass doors opened. Amara stepped into the morning glare, flanked by no bodyguards, no PR team, just presence. Black tailored suit, minimal jewelry, the same calm that silenced an airport. For 3 seconds, the noise continued, then faltered. Something in her composure rewired the air. She raised one hand, not to wave, to pause. "Good morning," she said, voice low but carried by conviction. "Let's be clear, I didn't release that footage. The truth did." Cameras clicked in sync like applause disguised as chaos. A reporter called out, "Do you think you embarrassed your company?" Amara turned slightly, meeting the question with stillness. "If a company is embarrassed by integrity," she said, "it wasn't built right to begin with." The crowd murmured, a ripple of approval, disbelief, and respect all tangled together. Another question flew. "What would you say to the employee who insulted you?" Amara paused, her eyes steady on the horizon beyond the lenses. "I'd tell her this. Her mistake isn't who she hurt. It's what she thought she could get away with. I don't hate her. I pity the system that taught her arrogance was authority. A hush spread, not silence, but reflection." Behind her, Nia waited near the entrance, phone in hand, ready to intervene. Amara didn't need her yet. She took one breath and continued. "Power isn't about firing people. It's about building a place where no one forgets what respect looks like, even under pressure." For a heartbeat, the street went quiet. Even the wind seemed to listen. Then slowly, the reporters lowered their microphones. Someone in the crowd clapped once. Then again. The sound grew. Soft, uneven, but real. Amara nodded once, almost imperceptibly, then turned to walk inside. As the doors closed behind her, her reflection overlapped with the glass. Calm, precise, infinite. On the other side of the door, Nia whispered, "You didn't just answer them. You rewrote the question." Amara smiled faintly. "Good. Maybe next time they'll ask better ones." That afternoon, networks aired her statement uncut. No spin, no edit, no dramatic soundtrack, just truth, spoken quietly enough to echo louder than outrage. And somewhere, in a dozen airports across the world, flight attendants adjusted their posture before speaking, remembering her tone, her silence, her control. 2 days later, the applause turned into questions. Social feeds, once flooded with praise, now buzzed with opinion wars. Tweets scrolled like smoke. Of course she stayed calm. She's rich. Would she have that power if she weren't the CEO? Justice is easier when you own the system. By morning, hashtags had split the story in two. Power with Grace battled against Daikar and privilege in silence. News anchors dissected her composure like it was strategy, not conviction. A popular pundit sneered on live TV. Maybe she didn't shout because she knew cameras would protect her. Let's not confuse calmness with courage. Nia slammed her laptop shut, fury flashing in her eyes. "This is ridiculous," she said. "They're twisting what happened." Amara stood by the window of her corner office high above the skyline, quiet as always. The city below shimmered, alive and restless. "They're not twisting it," she said. "They're trying to own it. That's what power does when it feels threatened." At the same time, inside the company, some executives whispered about damage control. Few board members wanted her to issue a formal apology for the optics. One even suggested she step back from public appearances. Amara listened to them all in a meeting that stretched too long. When they finally asked for her response, she said, "You hired me to build an airline that people could trust. You can't do that by apologizing for the truth. No one spoke after that. That evening, she walked home alone through the city. A drizzle fell, cold, thin, relentless. She didn't mind. Silence had always been her shelter. At a crosswalk, a woman in a Sky Nova uniform stopped her. "Ms. Lewis?" Amara turned. The woman looked nervous, eyes soft with something close to gratitude. "I just wanted to say, I was scared to stand up for myself last year. Watching you made me realize I didn't have to stay quiet and small." Amara smiled gently. Then the noise was worth it. Later that night, she sat by her living room window, city lights flickering like restless thoughts. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Nia. "We can release a statement to clarify your intent." "Should I draft one?" Amara typed back, "No, let them argue. They're talking about dignity. That means it's working." She set the phone aside and looked at her reflection in the glass. It stared back, not as a CEO, not as a headline, but as a woman who had stopped asking permission to be respected. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline. Inside, her voice stayed steady in the quiet. "Let them debate my tone," she murmured, "as long as they remember my boundaries." And in that single sentence lived the difference between silence as fear and silence as command. The invitation came sealed in politeness. "We'd be honored to have you on the morning line. Live, uncensored, global." Nia read it twice before speaking. "They're not inviting you. They're baiting you." Amara's answer was calm, predictable. "Then let them." 3 days later, the studio lights hit her face like heat from judgment itself. Rows of cameras framed her seat. Center stage, minimalist backdrop. The host smiling, that dangerous TV smile. "Ms. Lewis," he began, "you've become a symbol. For dignity to some, for corporate power to others. Let's start with the obvious question. Do you believe your silence made you untouchable?" Amara folded her hands. "No," she said evenly. "It made me accountable." The host tilted his head. "Accountable to whom?" "To the people watching. The ones who never get cameras when it happens to them." A small murmur from the audience, approval wrapped in surprise. He pressed on. "But you fired someone on camera. Isn't that humiliation in reverse?" Amara's gaze didn't waver. "It wasn't revenge. It was correction." She mocked a passenger. I reminded her she was looking at one. The host leaned forward, sensing story. "You say you stand for equality, but isn't it easier to talk about grace when you sit at the top?" Amara smiled faintly. "Equality doesn't start from the top. It starts when someone at the top refuses to ignore what's beneath them." The studio went quiet. The silence wasn't empty. It hummed, charged with awareness. A voice from backstage whispered, "We're trending already." Another producer gestured to cut the segment short. The host ignored them, hungry for one more spark. "Last question," he said. "If you could go back to that day on the gate, the insult, would you change anything?" Amara looked straight into the camera. For a heartbeat, she wasn't speaking to the host. She was speaking to the millions watching. To every person who'd ever swallowed their dignity in public and smiled through it. "I'd change nothing," she said softly. "Because if silence can expose arrogance, then maybe silence was never weakness. Maybe it was the language of power all along." The audience exhaled, that collective, wordless sound of recognition. When the red light above the camera blinked off, the host leaned back. "That," he said quietly, "was not the answer I expected." Amara rose, smoothing her jacket. "That's because you expected noise. I deal in truth." Outside the studio, a dozen reporters waited with fresh microphones and recycled questions. She walked past them without a word. By the time she reached the car, her phone buzzed. A text from Nia. "You just made silence trend." Amara smiled, faint but certain. "Then maybe," she whispered to herself. "They're finally starting to listen." The car door closed. Cameras flashed behind tinted glass, catching only her silhouette. Calm, unbothered, unstoppable. By the next morning, Amara's interview had circled the globe. Clips of her voice. Silence was never weakness. Flooded timelines like a mantra people didn't know they'd been waiting for. Anchors replayed it. Activists quoted it. Executives studied it like it was a case study in control. In Atlanta, a black pilot posted, for the first time in 20 years, "I saw myself in leadership." In London, a stewardess wrote anonymously, She didn't shout for respect. She made respect unavoidable. Even rival airlines began holding emergency meetings, some to plan PR statements, others quietly, to rethink everything they thought they understood about training. At Skynova headquarters, Nia stood before a wall of digital dashboards, all blue and gold, live numbers rising by the second. 17 million views, she said. Amara nodded, sipping coffee unfazed. And what about policy? Nia smiled. 3 other airlines just called. They want to license Seeing Dignity. The silence that followed wasn't disbelief. It was quiet victory. A week later, Amara sat in a conference room surrounded by board members and executives. On the table lay 2 documents. One was an official apology letter drafted by PR. The other was her new directive. Short, blunt, powerful. She pushed the apology aside. This isn't about saving face, she said. It's about saving culture. Her directive read, effective immediately. Every Skynova employee, from cleaner to captain, will undergo bias and respect training. Violations will be broadcast internally, not to shame, but to educate. Silence will no longer be mistaken for submission. No one argued. Not this time. Outside the building, protesters gathered, but not in anger. They held handmade signs that read, "Respect flies first." She changed the altitude. One little girl on her father's shoulders held a cardboard airplane painted with the words, "My skin can fly too." Amara saw it through the glass and felt something shift deep inside. Heavier than pride, lighter than peace. Later that afternoon, she walked the hangar floor where engineers checked engines and mechanics wiped down silver wings. They greeted her differently now. Not out of fear, but recognition. The quiet kind. The kind that says, "We saw what you did, and we understood it." Mia Lopez, the young attendant from Gate C-22, approached her. "Ms. Lewis, the new recruits watched your interview during onboarding." They cried, Amara smiled. Then they'll remember what not to become. That night, headlines glowed across skyscraper screens. The Amara effect, when leadership sounds like silence. Inside her office, she stood by the window again, watching the city that once judged her now mirror her values. Nia entered quietly. "You realize," she said, "you've changed the rule book." Amara turned, her reflection half lit by the skyline. "I didn't change it," she said. "I just reminded them it existed." Outside, another jet ascended through the night, its wings catching light like promise. And somewhere between that sky and the city below, a truth hung suspended, simple and enduring. Power isn't what you show. It's what you don't have to prove. The boardroom lights dimmed behind her as Amara stepped into the elevator alone. For the first time in weeks, there were no cameras, no questions, no metrics to measure worth. Just the sound of her own breath echoing softly against mirrored walls. When the doors opened, she didn't head home. She drove, and no driver, no security, through midnight streets until the skyline gave way to memory. 2 hours later, she parked outside a small regional airport in Charlotte. No headlines here, just old hangars, rusted fences, and the smell of jet fuel that never quite left her bones. This was where she had started. At 16, she'd worked here after school, sweeping the lobby floors for minimum wage. Back then, she used to watch passengers walk past without ever seeing her, invisible in her uniform, a name tag that said Amara J. instead of Lewis because someone once told her last name sounded too strong. She remembered the first time she was told to move, not because she was in the way, but because someone assumed she didn't belong inside. She'd smiled then, small and polite, because she thought silence meant survival. Now, standing in that same hallway decades later, she realized silence had become her strength. Not to hide, but to hold power without apology. She walked past the check-in counter where her younger self once stood. A cleaning woman looked up, startled. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Amara smiled gently. "You already are." Outside, rain began to fall, thin, steady lines tracing the runway lights. She watched a small plane take off into the storm, trembling against the wind, then finding its rhythm above it. The sight pulled something loose inside her. Her phone buzzed once, a message from Nia. "You good?" She typed back, "Just remembering why I started." Then, after a pause, she added, "Tell legal to drop the word incident from all reports. From now on, call it a lesson." She leaned against the glass, her reflection merging with the rain-streaked night. The same calm eyes, the same posture. But now she saw the cost of it. Every humiliation she'd endured before she could stand tall in silence. And she whispered, almost to the younger version of herself still sweeping that floor, "You made it. And you didn't have to become loud to be heard." As she turned to leave, a little girl in a janitor's uniform, maybe 10, helping her mother, stared at her shyly. Amara crouched, smiled, and said, "You like planes?" The girl nodded. "Then one day," Amara said softly, "don't just fly in them. Build them." The girl grinned, eyes bright as landing lights. Amara stepped back into the rain, pulling her coat close, unbothered by the chill. Above her, a jet traced a silver line through the dark, like a reminder carved into the sky itself. Some storms you don't run from. Some you rise through, and that's how you change the weather. 3 months later, Skynova launched its new global campaign. The tagline glowed across airports, billboards, and boarding passes. "Dignity flies first, no celebrity faces. No soundtrack. Just real employees, pilots, attendants, janitors, technicians, standing side by side, looking into the lens with the quiet pride Amara had taught them." The final frame faded to black. Then her voice, calm, unmistakable, filled the silence. "Respect isn't a privilege. It's air. And in my company, everyone deserves to breathe." The ad ended. The world exhaled. That afternoon, Amara stood on a stage at the Global Aviation Summit in Dubai. The room shimmered with glass, light, and expectation. Executives from every major airline filled the seats. Cameras streamed live to 20 countries. But when she stepped to the microphone, she didn't talk about revenue or expansion or quarterly growth. She talked about people. "Airlines are built on trust," she began. "The trust that will take care of strangers at 30,000 feet, even when the world forgets to care for them on the ground." She paused, eyes sweeping the crowd. "I once believed silence was protection. Then I learned it could be purpose. Because sometimes the most powerful sound in the world is the moment the noise stops." Back in the States, Leo Tran, the boy who filmed that first video, watched the live stream from his dorm room. He smiled, remembering the chaos, the disbelief, the justice he'd captured by instinct. His pinned comment still sat under the original clip. She never raised her voice, and then somehow, everyone heard her. It had nearly 1 billion views now. After the summit, Amara declined interviews again. Instead, she spent the evening alone on a rooftop overlooking the desert skyline, a cup of tea warming her hands. Nia joined her quietly. "They just named you most influential CEO of the year," she said. Amara smiled faintly. "Influence fades. Integrity doesn't." Nia laughed softly. "You think you'll ever rest?" Amara looked at the horizon, where the last light bent over the dunes. "Rest is for people who stop believing the world can change. I still believe." They sat in silence, watching planes cut across the twilight, white trails against a violet sky. Each one a reminder that justice, like flight, depends on lift and balance. Amara set down her cup, her voice low but sure. "Every story like mine should end the same way, not with revenge, but repair." She turned toward Nia, the glow of the city catching her profile. "When they remember me," she said, "I don't want them to say I was powerful. I want them to say I was fair." The camera would fade there if this were a film. The wind catching her hair, engines humming above, the city lights below. A woman who changed the altitude of power without raising her tone. Because in a world addicted to shouting, she proved that quiet could roar louder. And sometimes, the loudest justice is silence that doesn't bow.